Hello, physiological psychology students at Mary Baldwin College. Dr. Tausman coming to you. You're probably listening to this audio recording at the end of the particular Module 3, but I'm actually recording it at a different time than I did for the other ones. I'm looking the night before at what you did such a great job at posting on the discussion board, and then I'm adding it in here. I was really just very impressed by what you folks had to say. So the purpose of this particular audio presentation will be to summarize some key points here, and I'll just ask you to take notes and kind of share the ideas here. With the 4 questions we had on the discussion board, I'm going to summarize this, although you can go back yourself and obviously look at things. Question 1 asked you to define what obsessive compulsive disorder is. I thought the conversation regarding this was just excellent. It is, in fact, an anxiety disorder. I'm kind of staring at what Amber had to say, which I thought was a very nice answer with things. Obsession is where you think about something over and over again, and a compulsion is where you do the behavior. It is considered an anxiety disorder. There must be some sort of neurobiological mechanism that is causing some of this, although they haven't quite traced it down. Chris Farley, a very sad situation. Chris was a brilliant actor, but unfortunately he had OCD and fueled that by taking cocaine, which in fact makes it even much worse than that. So certainly enjoyed the conversation you folks had as far as that. Question 2, clinical trials. So what you need to know about clinical trials, and most of you actually had fine things to say for this. I'm going to refer to what Debbie had to say. Before you ever get a drug approved by the FDA, you actually have to take that drug through clinical trials. Even before phase 1 of clinical trials is animal studies. You take the animals and you give it the drug and see what effect it has on the animal behavior. Then if it looks good, you file things with the FDA, asking for permission to go on to each phase. And as Debbie says, phase 1, you just look at safety and dose range to make sure everything is fine, small group. Phase 2, you move on to from safety to giving things to a larger group of people to make sure it's still safe, and you start looking a bit at effectiveness. Does it actually help people? Phase 3 is the key phase. Usually a couple thousand people, multiple clinical trials at multiple locations. You monitor the side effects. A lot of money in phase 3 put in, because if it is approved after phase 3, then you can actually bring it to market. You can file an application with the FDA saying, I'd like this medication approved. Of course, when you get the drug, when you purchase the drug and you look on the insert, it actually has all the negative effects, side effects that actually happen during the trial. One thing that the drug companies vehemently oppose, which I think is actually pretty reasonable to oppose it, is when they do those TV commercials, they actually have to share any side effect that occurred when people got the drug, which might sound fair, but what would be more fair is if they compared the control group, the group that didn't get anything, to the group that actually got the drug, because even if the numbers are the same, which means you know it's not the drug, you wouldn't really want to report things that were the same for both groups, but in fact they have to report any side effect. And finally, post-approval study is phase 4. After the drug has been out there, sometimes they continue to collect data to make sure that it's okay. Okay, next was the idea of applying this to the various trials. I haven't tried to pronounce the name of the cannabinoid product, dropinol. Boy, I didn't do that very well, did it? The THC, the pot product, is in phase 2. Isn't that interesting to give people with OCD? Here, have a little marijuana. Or marijuana derivative. It is in phase 2, meaning they're just trying to make sure that it's working okay and that it's safe for the people in a small clinical trial. The Lexapro, which is what? Cytopram, is in phase 3. That means they're really using it for clinical trials for the condition of obsessive compulsive, because it's already approved for depression, obviously. Lyrica, phase 4, meaning it's already been approved, and they're just looking at it on different measures. Many of you noted, actually, that's the next question here, so let's go for that. Independent and dependent variable. The idea behind independent and dependent variable, dependent is what is measured, and you did see that in a bunch of the studies what the Brown scale, I think it was, is that correct? The Yale-Brown obsessive compulsive scale was the dependent variable. Somebody didn't quite get the independent variable quite right, but that is what is manipulated, and in most of these it's the medication. One group was a control group that didn't get anything, the other group got the drug. So an independent variable is a general category name. Usually it's the condition or the drug. The two levels are usually people who got the drug versus people who did not. So make sure you clarify that for the notes. Actually, for all the studies, yeah, it was the Yale-Brown obsessive compulsive scale which was used. That's a very common one to see if things are actually working. Finally, last but not least, the products and what the products do neurochemically. Hopefully you found this interesting. The responses were quite good. Marinol, the product, works on the cannabinoid receptors in the brain. We have pot receptors in the brain. Isn't that pleasant? So they work on this receptor and seem to cause people to eat a bit more. Maybe no comment about that, except to share with you that when I was in my teen years, my brother once made some brownies that seemed to be laced with a product that clearly was not an approved product, if you know what I mean. Had some pot in it. As far as the effects, this product, well, it maps to the cannabinoid receptors in the brain. It reduces glutamate release, because when glutamate is released, you kind of get very active. This seems to control that and might help people with the disorder. I'm going now by, who posted this one? Christy, you had a really nice post for this one. The next product, let's see, what did we have next there? Lexapro, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Notice very interesting here, this product is used much more for depression, but it actually has been used here. Is depression neurobiologically different than OCD? Most people would argue it is, but in fact they're giving this drug, so the reductionism doesn't quite work so well here, but the product is probably useful. Lyrica, anticonvulsant. Notice a GABA receptor agonist. If you increase GABA receptors, GABA opposes glutamate, and if you enhance GABA, well, for my daughter that has epilepsy, it'll stop epileptic seizures because it opens up a chloride channel, and therefore it seems to help people with OCD. So very interesting. Have you noticed how many different drugs there are out there and how they're used for multiple diseases? This would suggest that the reductionism we talk about with one disease state, one receptor, and map that receptor maybe is not so valid, because we're seeing, oh, just give them this might have a positive action. Lyrica, as was stated here, might bind to GABA A or GABA B receptors and might actually help the neurons calm down, basically, by reducing their activity. So hopefully this made a good deal of sense. I'm going to add a little more onto this in just a second, but that is the deal. Okay, so besides just summarizing that in terms of the notes, I also, if you look on the website and on the module, I have an article, a relatively brief article on obsessive compulsive disorder in children and adolescents. I'd like you to read through that article if you could. You can kind of summarize some of the key points in it. I'm just staring at it now. I think from my perspective, you can certainly read through it, maybe highlight a little bit, not the whole thing, but highlight how frequent these problems are in children and teenagers. What other things tend to happen with these children, psychiatric comorbidity, that is. So give me maybe a paragraph or so on that. They also have a section on differential diagnosis. See if you can give me a little bit on that as well. And I think most importantly, from my perspective, is towards the end, in terms of treatment, see if you can summarize some of the psychopharmacological studies in terms of the treatment for this. It looks like they talk a lot about the SSRIs, which are clinical trial obviously found as well, and obviously some of the other trials that you talked about on the website. So hopefully this is interesting to you. As I said, I was very impressed by what you guys had to post, and hopefully you enjoyed doing it. Thank you very much. Bye now.